morning, and let it be known on this Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. The sun is shining in New York, and it's beginning to rise in Los Angeles. We have two special guests, one from New York and one from Los Angeles this morning to talk about their organization led by the one and only Macy Gray called My Good. But first, we will get into the headlines of the morning. Officials in the Chicago suburb of Evanston, Illinois, voted this week to release the first batch of funds in a program offering reparations to Black residents whose families have felt the effects of decades of discriminatory housing practices. It is the first of its kind in this country. Alderman Robin Rue Simmons and the Evanston City Council developed plans to direct revenue from a 3% tax on legalized cannabis into assistance for home loans. Simmons said, "We had to do something radically different to address the racial divide that we had in our city, which includes historic oppression, exclusion, and divestment in the Black community." The first initiative of the $10 million plan is the Restorative Housing Reparations Program that would distribute up to $25,000 for housing per eligible resident, with funding expected to come from that marijuana tax. Evanston's plan includes making sure that certain African Americans who were descendants of the slave trade and also who lived in the Evanston area and were affected. Last week, Amalgamated Bank became the first major American bank to endorse the National Reparations Bill, H.R. 40, which is sponsored by U.S. Rep. Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas. That will create a commission to develop reparation proposals for African Americans. It's something that we have discussed on this program and will continue to discuss throughout the Black press of America. Right now, let's bring on our CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis.
Good morning, Stacey. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Chavis. Good to see you, as always.
Thank you. On behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, our chair, Karen Carter Richards, and our entire board of directors of the NNPA, representing 230 African-American-owned newspapers and media companies, we welcome everyone. And you're right, this reparations, we are thankful that the city of Evanston, Illinois, has taken a step. It is a step in the right direction, and we hope that H.R. 40 is enacted by the Congress of the United States this year.
Yeah, and you're right. It is a step, and it's the first tangible step, Dr. Chavis. It's amazing that residents are going to actually receive reparations, in this case in the form of up to $25,000 for housing. So it is a step.
Right, it's a step, and and I would say that it's a small step compared to the suffering that's in the trillions of dollars that African Americans over 400 years, 500 years have suffered. We got to get that book out, Stacey, on the transatlantic slave trade, so that everybody will know the depth of the suffering. Reparations is about repairing the damage. In order to repair the damage, you have to know the extent of the damage. And that's why certainly we salute Evanston, Illinois, for taking this tangible, meaningful, and substantial step. But I think it's much more that's coming. And I'm glad that the door is opening. Now we have to make sure that the door is opening wider, not only for the citizens of Evanston and all the people in the state of Illinois, but all the people in the United States. And also we have to attend to our brothers and sisters in Africa, where our ancestors came from, where they were stolen and delivered to the shores of this country to give free labor that built this country. One of the reasons why the United States is the strongest economy in the world has its roots in slavery and the enslavement of African people.
Absolutely. And Dr. Chavis, 383 years, nearly 4 centuries after documents show that the first slaves were brought on a ship to the city, Boston has its first Black mayor. Former City Council President Kim Janey is taking over today for Marty Walsh, who was confirmed this week as U.S. Labor Secretary. Mayor Janey also becomes the first woman mayor in the city's history. She is a very active individual. She's done work with the NAACP. She's worked with several women's groups. And she said that this is not an accident in Boston, that there's such an enormous wealth gap Black families still face in that city, noting this: African-American families in Boston have a median net worth of just $8. She says it's not an accident. It's the product of discriminatory policies that we have all inherited. Under my leadership, we will call out this gap and implement workforce, housing, and education policies to address it. So a big step in the city of Boston, which is historically known for oppression, really.
Well, it's also the cradle of democracy. While the Philadelphia Convention was in the state of Pennsylvania, a lot of the tenants of the first settlement started in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, as well as the colony down in Jamestown, where Angolan slaves or Angolan people that were enslaved. I have to always use the right term. We were enslaved. We were not born as slaves. Were first planted on our nation's soil. So I think that we salute the mayor of Boston. We got to get on the program. I think that's a great tribute to Women's History Month to have the first Black woman as the mayor of the city of Boston, Massachusetts.
Yep, absolutely. And this from the Houston Forward-Times: Mulana Doach went from learning how to play the game of golf at an early age from her father, using clubs that forced her to learn how to play from her unnatural side, to becoming the first African-American woman PGA member to serve as a general manager of a golf facility. The Houston Forward-Times says that Mulana, who is 40 years old, was named general manager at Herman Park Golf Course in Houston. She began her role on January the 1st. And the PGA released a statement saying they are proud of her for earning this prestigious leadership position in golf management while achieving another impressive milestone in her successful career. So Mulana Doach, we say congratulations. And again, Dr. Chavis, what do you say about making history during Women's History Month?
The best way to celebrate women's history is to make more history. And our sister from Houston is definitely making history on the PGA, on the golf course. And we thank the Forward Times in Houston, Texas, for bringing this story to us. To Karen Carter Richards, the publisher and the chair of the NNPA, thank you for this national news story.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can read more about it on the Houston Forward Times website. It's written by the columnist extraordinaire Jeffrey Boney. So we look forward to reading even more about this great accomplishment.
Right. Shout out to Jeff Boney. He's one of our senior correspondents. He's one of the greatest writers in Black America. And we know when he lifts his pen up and he puts those words down, it makes also history to document the history of our people. So thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks a whole lot. We appreciate it. This morning, we welcome two wonderful, wonderful guests who are making a difference with the company called My Good. Grace Blake and Sharon Harris. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
All right, Sister Blake, Sister Harris, thank you for joining.
You're quite welcome. Thanks for having us.
We are appreciative and really want to know more about My Good. I do know one thing about My Good, which, as you know, it was started by Grammy Award-winning singer Macy Gray in July of 2020. But I'm going to leave the rest to you guys. I had to say that because it made me feel good. So we'll start, since Sharon has come a long way, Dr. Chavis. She's way out in LA. You know, she took the overnight flight to be here with us. Sharon, tell us about My Good.
Okay, well, My Good was created as a response to what was going on with police brutality. So Macy's a mom, and she always thinks about, what if that was my child, and the other part of it is when the media goes away, people aren't around a lot of these families. So sometimes there are these very high profile cases. Some of the cases aren't even heard of. So Macy thought it was really important to connect with the families, to find out what they need, to have any.
We kind of losing.
Provide.
Okay, so Miss Blake, you want to pick up on your colleagues?
Sure. To finish what Sharon was saying, My Good is a 501c3 nonprofit that was founded by Macy. That Macy is the founder, and Sharon and I are the co-founders. And it is to assist the families who have been affected by police brutality, who have lost their loved ones. So we provide wraparound services such as mental health. We help with education, educational needs, and pointing them in the right direction in terms of financial support. So these are the families that, as soon as this incident happens, their world is certainly turned upside down, and some of these families may not have insurance. They may not have the ability to even bury their loved ones. So here we can step in and help join with other partners in being able to help them with their funeral costs, if they need that headstone for their loved ones, and really be able to help shift them and move them in the direction to be able to really deal with this trauma, and the goal is to get them back on their feet.
Wow, and you both were busy and have been busy in your own careers. I understand, Grace Blake, you're originally from Canada. You are a music industry veteran, producer of 2 award-winning PBS series, Front and Center and Speak Easy, and a longtime director of artist relations at Iridium. Is that right?
It's the Iridium. So it was home to where Les Paul was in residency for 14 years. So it's this iconic New York venue in the heart of Times Square.
Wow. So very, very busy. And I know, Sharon, you handle actually day-to-day tour logistics for Macy Gray, and you also have like 2 decades of nonprofit management, I believe. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You're actually, I'm told, from Mount Vernon, New York?
I am. Yes, I am from Mount Vernon, New York, and I have a background as a musician. Was the only female keyboardist to be hired by Barry White and tour with him for many years. After that, I went into the nonprofit sector and facilitated a partnership with Berklee College of Music with a youth center here in South LA, and worked on sending a lot of kids to Berklee to study music. And then I transferred into artist management.
Wow. So My Good really is first responders. When things happen, you guys are on the spot. Can you talk a little bit more about that, Sharon?
So, I mean, when we find out that one of these occurrences has happened, it's what we want to do is make sure that we connect with that family to find out what they need, how we can help them. We have an intake form on our website. So some families will reach out to us and let us know. And then we can put together a case for them, figure out how we can connect resources, what we can do ourselves. But it's really important to have that contact. And Macy's very good about also connecting with the families, talking to them. And she's just very passionate about it. And she also wants to shed a light on who these victims were in terms of their personalities, what made them happy. She wants people to know that they had aspirations, and that's something that's really important to her.
Yeah. Dr. Chavis, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Yes, I really want to thank Sister Blake and Sister Harris. These are 2 talented African-American women in their own right and their own careers, and come together. I like the name of your organization. You're not only bringing good to people, you're helping people to recover the trauma that is experienced too much in our community from police brutality or for some other tragedy that happens. I just want to salute you. And I think that that's the reason why we have the Black press, is to bring to the light these kind of great news stories that the mainstream press does not cover. So you can rest assured that the Black press supports you in your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And so, and you were mentioning about how families get in contact with you. So what has to happen? What has to happen for them to get in contact? How do they get in? I think that's the better question. How do they get in contact with you? And what do you look for before My Good goes into action?
Great.
So what we've done is we have partnered with various coalitions, and such as Truth, Hope, Justice out of Chicago, headed by Alice Howell and Andrew Stroth. And they have, I think, almost 1,000 mothers in their organization that are at various stages in terms of needing assistance. Some are back on their feet and able to thrive, and others, such as a mother in Chicago that we found out, Alice came to us and said, you know, we've kind of exhausted on our end. Is there something that My Good can do to help this mother who was living in her car? And she had lost her loved one a few years back. And she just really couldn't move forward in terms of the trauma she was experiencing. Every time there was a news break, it always referenced her loved one, and she kind of just felt like she was stuck. And she lost her job. She was unable to work mentally, physically. And so My Good stepped in and provided temporary housing. We then found a solution, because certainly we couldn't afford that temporary housing place for a long period of time. And we were able to work out a temporary solution, a permanent solution for her. And My Good was able to help with those costs. The next step, of course, is addressing the mental health solution. And we've have partnered with a couple of organizations that are based around the country, as well as a licensed therapist who her role is to help and with the healing and providing group support. And then, of course, this mother is now set up seeking employment. So those are some of the ways, but families really are referred to us. Some of them hear about My Good through some of the press and media opportunities that all three of us do. And then, as Sharon mentioned, there's an intake form that they would fill out. And from there, we, will take a closer look to see, just these families, if they are the immediate family members, the date of the incident, if it falls within our criteria, and then, of course, they get passed on to our family health coordinator.
Wow, and I know the mental health component is so important, particularly in our community, and the Black community. Is still this stigma attached to mental illness. I'm sure that's a challenge. Sharon, what are some of the challenges that you guys have found when it comes to the mental health component?
Well, as you mentioned, mental health is still very much of a stigma, especially when you're looking at the Black community. So it's moving past that comfort level and getting into trust as well, and having more conversations. So that's one of the things that we're really looking at doing, is coordinating more conversations around mental health, around the issues at hand, and to really see how we can address the embedded PTSD, because it's not only the families that suffer, our entire community suffers every time something happens. So how can we bring some of these things to the forefront and make sure that people are aware and can feel comfortable asking for help and can feel comfortable trusting somebody?
Wow.
Absolutely.
And the challenges of starting this in the middle of a pandemic. You started really right in the middle of the pandemic, from what I understand, it was July of 2020. Ms. Blake, can you talk about that a little bit?
Certainly. I believe, as Sharon referenced earlier, Macy in February had heard, was really moved to tears and regarding the Ahmaud Arbery case, and then, of course, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And she has 3 young, well, they're not so young anymore, but 3 adult children, 2 girls and a boy. And she just thought of her kids. and these mothers and the loss that they were feeling. And she started compiling these video journals or documentaries, as you will, these mini pieces. Just she wanted to get to the sense of understanding what is it that these families go through? What is the missing piece? What do they need? And so there were many different themes that came up throughout this. Of course, the mental health component, the financial component, but it's also about the memory of their loved ones and how media, may paint a different picture of their loved ones. And they really wanted to highlight the fact that these are young people or husbands and wives that had dreams, hopes and dreams. These are individuals that, Botham Jean, that wanted to be prime minister. These are individuals that wanted to be community activists, that wanted to be EMTs, that had be active members of the community. And so she came to Sharon and I, and we, had this robust conversation about what can we do. Here we are in the midst of a pandemic. All of our careers are kind of on hold, but we can do something. And in light of the marches and the rallying cries happening across the country and around the world, we really wanted to be able to help these families. And I must say that we owe a lot of gratitude to Reverend Wanda Johnson, the mother of Oscar Grant, who has the Oscar Grant Foundation, who really helped us in terms of shepherding us through and how to speak with these families. And so this is where My Good was born.
Wow. Dr. Chavis?
Well, I was just listening, and I want to thank again our dear sisters for starting My Good. I think that the name itself embodies not only your empathy, your care, and you're connected with the music and entertainment industry. Can you speak about how important it is for our music and for our songs, for our poetry, for our art forms, not only to represent some of the challenges that we have faced as a people of African descent, but how we should care for one another? I think your testimony here is going to be inspiring to mothers, fathers, to families to not only get through trauma, but to learn from all of the years and decades and centuries of trauma that people of African descent have had to endure. But there's always a better day coming if we stay together. I say all the time that resilience is in the DNA of our people. But can you just speak before we close about what you have seen since you started My Good, of how people are willing to come together and lend their helping hand to those who have been in a less fortunate situation?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of really great support, especially with the pandemic. There has been a greater influx in empathy. I know that we've had a couple of events, and we're so grateful to those who have supported our mission. I think also when you're looking at music and the power of music, and I think this is something else that Macy is really committed to, is making sure that there's a message. So she has been working on new tracks that really reflect what's going on. And as you know, like the music of the civil rights era was very, very key. And I think artists have a wonderful platform to invoke change. People listen to them. They are influencers. So I'm very hopeful that they will look at what is transpiring and become a lot more vocal and understand how they can influence communities and people as a whole.
Outstanding. And, I think you mentioned earlier about the individual in Chicago, the mom in Chicago. Well, I understand, that's just obviously one example. I understand there are other examples. There was health insurance that you guys helped a mom in Northern California with. Can you just briefly tell us about that aspect too? Because we're honing in on the financial aspect, but there are other, as you mentioned today, there are so many other aspects, including the healthcare aspect. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Certainly. This mother, again, the pandemic has brought so many situations and uncertainty to families that once had. And this family had once had their own thriving business. And of course, was a government mandated shutdown. And health insurance is a major key. Health insurance within especially our community is major. It's hard enough getting people to go to a doctor, go to a dentist, really take care of their whole mind, body experience, health experience. And so this mother started, was again dealing with PTSD and trauma from the death of her loved one, and was having seizures, and of course no health insurance. And so she called Macy. Then we all got on the phone together and wanted to sort out how we could be able to help this mother not have these bills. The bills, of course, piling up, and of course, again, reigniting the anxiety and the thought of, how am I going to pay for this? I don't have the means to do so. I'm not working. And so we were able to walk her through and help her with health insurance. And so this is certainly an important piece with the healing and with My Good, making sure that these families have the right tools to be able to heal themselves.
Wow, amazing. So much going on in the world, but there's My Good, Dr. Chavis. There's so much My Good here. We really appreciate it. And I'll give you your closing thoughts, Dr. Chavis.
Well, thank you again. We'd like to thank Sister Blake and Sister Harris for your leadership, and thank all of the women and others that work with you for your outreach. It's a great example of celebrating the history of our people, the commitment of our people to make a difference, and particularly to lift each other up. I think that in this pandemic has taught all of us how important it is for us to care about one another and to do something about it as a result of caring for one another. And certainly My Good, you're taking action. And there's a great, when we see all the signs that say Black Lives Matter, but what you're doing is not only holding up the banner of Black Lives Matter, you're doing good with My Good. And God bless you and thank you for it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
And it takes a family and a team for sure.
Absolutely.
There's many behind us holding us up.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. It takes a village, right?
Yes, it does.
It is only fitting that our Women's History Month shout out today goes to Macy Gray. Hailing from Canton, Ohio, Macy Gray remains an undeniable force of nature, selling out venues in nearly every corner of the globe 2 decades into her storied career. One of her most important roles is that of an activist and mother. Macy is a champion for change and mental health advocacy. She is committed to using her platform as an artist to be a voice for those who cannot speak or be heard. Today, we shout out Macy Gray and My Good. Let it be known, despite everything, no one can dictate who you are to other people. We will see you tomorrow.